Just like many Chinese people, I sometimes find myself getting nostalgic for China in the 90s and early 2000s. The only thing is, I wasn't there. In fact, I didn't move to China until 2012. I know that might sound strange, but actually, I don't think it's that weird. When people feel nostalgic for this period, what they're usually thinking about is a time before China had fully developed, when there weren't so many tall buildings, when the roads had less traffic, when cities were less well connected to each other, and things were both less convenient, but also more exciting. Well, China's incredible development didn't happen everywhere at the same time. It moved like a wave from east to west and flowed down from big cities to smaller ones. I spent my first year in China in Anqing, a small city in Anhui. Anqing certainly was not undeveloped when I lived there, but it was nothing like Shanghai, Beijing, or Shenzhen. There was no high-speed train station, no international supermarkets, and no Starbucks. There were, in fact, some similarities between Anqing in 2012 and first-tier coastal cities in the late 90s and early 2000s. There wasn't much traffic on the roads. There were internet cafes full of boys playing computer games, and there was even a VCD shop down the street from the school where I taught. Another thing that helps to explain my nostalgia for this period is my love of Chinese cinema. I watch a lot of Chinese films, and my favourites are those by sixth-generation directors. In these films, I often see things that remind me of my first few years in China. And whilst they don't always paint the nicest picture of what life was like, they do show an exciting era of change. My nostalgia is also not so strange when we realise that nostalgia is not memory. And in fact, its relationship to memory is weak at best. Nostalgia has much more to do with feelings about one's current situation and a longing for an idealised past. For me, images and ideas of the 1990s and early 2000s in China make me think of a time when I was younger and had fewer responsibilities. A time when I was embarking on an adventure and experiencing new things. I'm happy with my life now, but I'm older, more settled, and living a more familiar life. Just like me, some Chinese young people who get nostalgic for the 90s and early 2000s were also not actually there. They hadn't yet been born at that time. How old are you? Do you get nostalgic for the 90s and early 2000s, even though you weren't born or were very young at the time? If so, give this video a like and let me know. I think for these young people, their nostalgia for this period is partly because they long for a time before technology had become such an essential and even invasive part of life. A time when the internet was not in your pocket, but in a cafe where you went once or twice a week. This is true for me also. In my first year in China, I didn't even have a smartphone. The more basic technology meant that life back then was less convenient, but in some ways, it was also more free. Nostalgia is a strange thing though. It's a bit like alcohol. A little can bring you warmth and happiness, but too much will make you drunk on an idealized past. It's okay to miss the China of the 1990s and early 2000s, but we can't actually go there. The only life we can live is the one we have now. So we can take a few sips of nostalgia every now and then, but we must make sure that we stay sober and ready to embrace all the possibilities of our current life. So here's my challenge to you. Think about one thing from the 90s or early 2000s that you feel nostalgic for, and think of a modern version which you could do now. For example, maybe you miss gaming in internet cafes. Well, rather than sitting by yourself gaming on your phone at home, you could meet with a few friends at a cool cafe and all play the same game together on your phones instead. That's just an example. Be creative and let me know your ideas in the comments below. I'll see you next time. 再见.